Hey, folks. How's it going? All right, good. Listen, once again, I find myself in the unenviable position of being between you and beer, right? So here's what I'm going to do. You've heard a lot of great stuff here today, a lot of good tips, tricks, ideas, methods, and a lot of good kind of consistent storylines over the course of the day. I'm not going to reiterate any of that. I'm going to tell you a story. And that story, hopefully, will start to link in many of the ideas that we heard here today from all these terrific speakers. And hopefully, it'll get you thinking a little bit about the work that we do as product managers and as makers of digital products and services, and how those products and services affect the customers, the people that we are trying to influence with them, okay? Now, we call this episode 2, The Farm Awakens, and like any good story, this one has 6 acts. We're going to get through them pretty quickly. We have a hero. Every good story needs a hero. We have an empire, right? And then we have an unlikely ally. Now, before we get started with the story, I want to share with you a framing mechanism that should be familiar to you, especially if you were in my workshop yesterday, you will have noted. And it's the framing mechanism for the story, and we're going to keep coming back to this mechanism and fill in the blanks as we tell the story. The framing mechanism specifically is the hypothesis statement. Now, the hypothesis statement is a great way to start to focus your product management work towards outcomes. We heard that, right? Towards finding a problem to solve. We heard that, right? Towards focusing on your customers and developing empathy. We heard all of that. And it looks like this. It says, we believe, because we don't know, we can't predict the future, right? We believe that meeting this user need with these features or products or services will create some kind of a business outcome that we care about, and we'll know we're right when we see this evidence, right? We're looking for evidence, we're looking for data, quantitative and qualitative data. And as I tell you this story, we're going to keep coming back to this and just fill in the blanks and see if it makes sense, because your goal is to fill this out and tell yourself and your team a compelling story about the product, the feature, or the service that you are working on. So we start with Act 1, the user need, also known as the brutal economics of wheat farming. Now, you've been sitting here for a long time today. I bet you had no idea we were going to talk about wheat farming at 5:30 in the afternoon, but we are. And to do that, we have to meet our hero. Our hero is a farmer. He's a humble farmer, struggling to eke out a living in a hostile environment. Right? It's not actually this guy, but it is these folks here, these folks who farm wheat. We're going to talk about farmers today and tractors. You're going to love this. Wheat farmers. Now, the amazing thing here is that these are folks who farm wheat. And farmers do not market wheat. When you're driving through farmland, regardless of what country you live in, there aren't billboards on the highway that say wheat. It's what's for dinner, right? Like, none of this stuff happens, right? The reality is that the market does not care how much it costs to produce wheat when determining the price. The only thing that the market cares about is how much wheat is needed, right? And to meet consumer demands and how much the consumer will pay. Supply and demand, basic economics, right? And the interesting thing about this is that at any moment, a farmer of any kind, specifically a wheat farmer, can easily have millions of dollars in the ground, seed, labor, fertilizer, you name it, tremendous investment in the ground itself. And that investment is prone to a lot of risk: wind, weather, fungus, bugs, crop circles, you name it, anything could be in there to challenge the wheat harvest. Now, look, I'm going to drill on this really quick. I know it's late in the day, and I know there's beer coming up next, but we are going to do some math. Really quick. We're going to get yes for math. All right. We'll do it really quick, I promise. Look, to really understand wheat farming, which I know you all came here to learn about, is you have to understand how wheat is measured in bushels, which is about 60 pounds or about 27 kilos. A wheat farmer, an average wheat farmer, in this case we picked Oklahoma, has a wheat target yield of about 50 bushels per acre. An acre is about 0.4 hectares, right? Variable costs, we're talking about $249 per acre, rent, labor, seed, insurance, fertilizer. Fixed costs about $25 an acre. Okay, total cost to farm an acre of land, $274. And the math looks like this. If it costs us $274 per acre to do this, we're trying to get 50 bushels out. each bushel has to be at least $5.48 to break even. Now, when we wrote this talk, the market price for wheat was $5.59 per bushel, which means that the margin on a bushel of wheat was 11 cents, which means that the average profit on an average size farm, which is 438 acres, is $2,409. That's it. That's what a farmer makes, okay? $2,409 for all that work and all that investment, which means we have got to maximize our efficiency, we've got to maximize the profits so that we can extract as much as we can from the ground. Now, look, I'm not a farmer. Okay, and we did a lot of research for this talk, and we talked to a lot of farmers, and we heard a lot of interesting expressions from farmers. This is one of them. One said, rain makes grain. We want it to rain, right? We absolutely do. But if it rains too much, we get a thing called wheat with wet feet. I had no idea this thing existed, which means you've got fungus rotting at the root, which means that you really need to time the harvest for your wheat based on Mother Nature's schedule. Not too much rain, not too little rain. We have to ensure that we get the wheat out of the ground as quickly as we can because we've got a pretty thin profit margin and we've got to maximize it, right? That's your target audience. In fact, in doing research for this talk, we talked to a few farmers. And in fact, one of them said, look, I'd love to talk to you guys right now, but it's planting season, right? I can't talk to you right now. I've got to do this work. Let's talk after. Which was fascinating, gives you real insight into the consumers that you're working with, right? And all is designed to avoid this kind of stuff. So what's the user need? Let's talk about the user need, right? This is Act 1. Lower costs. It should cost me less to farm my wheat. I need to be more efficient so I can make more money off of this, and I need to obey Mother Nature's schedule. That's absolutely the most important thing, or I lose everything. So we come back to our framing hypothesis, and we start to fill in the blanks, right? We believe that meeting cost, efficiency, and timeliness concerns, right? That's our user need. We don't know how we're going to solve for this just yet, but we've got some ideas. Enter Act 2. Act 2, the business outcome, or meanwhile, at headquarters, right? This is not what headquarters looks like. This is what headquarters looks like. It's where you work, right? It's product managers, it's, right? Literally, we build products and services, and this is kind of what it looks like, you know, hoodies and that type of thing. And the reality is the company, in this case that we're going to talk about, the headquarters, is a company called John Deere. Now, John Deere is the Harley-Davidson of farm equipment. They really are. They make the biggest, the meanest, the greenest machines. And there's a level of brand loyalty here that you really, it's unexpected. I'll show you what I mean by that. And listen, don't scroll any further on this. I'm not joking. I mean, at your own risk at this point. Look at that one right there. That one's massive out there. Look, rightfully so. Farmers love their John Deere equipment. They really do. They're so loyal to this. They call themselves we're a Deere farm. We're a Deere operation, right? The green is iconic. The way that this works is iconic. In fact, I was talking about this. This is amazing. I was talking about this last week in Norway. I was in Norway last week, and we were out the night before the event, and somebody had driven their John Deere tractor to the movies in Norway. Like, people love, like, let's transportation. Let's just go to the movies in the tractor. And then later, the day that I was giving this talk in Norway, it's not kidding at all. If you can read Norwegian, you'll tell. Some guy was trying to outrun the cops in his John Deere tractor. This literally happened last week in Norway while I was there talking about tractors. And so, like, people love their tractors, right? And amazingly enough, it's not just about tractors. John Deere makes this amazing thing called precision ag for agriculture, ag technology. Everything you see in this picture, they make it. The hardware, the software, it's integrated hardware and software that delivers all kinds of amazing technological advances to increase efficiency, productivity, reduce costs, inform the farmer when exactly is the right time to plant, to harvest, the right mixture of chemicals. All of this stuff John Deere makes. And so because of this, they are a hardware company, right? They make the tractors and everything. They are a software company as well. And they do product discovery. They do a ton of it. Their farmers are highly motivated to give their feedback. The people who work at John Deere in Iowa and Illinois, they're situated in the center of the United States primarily. They go out and they talk to farmers all the time. They understand their customers, and there's the brand loyalty drives the feedback. There's no shortage of customer feedback about how we work and how the products and services meet those needs. And the reality is that these tractors aren't cheap at all, right? To drive home, right? This is a screenshot from the John Deere website. They have a build-your-own tractor wizard, in case you want to build your own tractor. These are the starting prices, okay? Starting prices. Before you add in all that precision ag technology, you start at about $400,000. You could finish up anywhere near $900,000 or $1 million for your tractor before you're finished. Okay? And so then the question becomes, if they're the biggest, the baddest, the greenest, the coolest, right, the highest tech, what's the business problem that they face? Well, let's talk about that, right? So I showed you before that to generate meaningful profits, you need a big operation, right? 438 acres yields $2,400. That's not enough, right? To operate a larger operation costs more money. And if it costs more money, technology, the precision ag technology, helps us farm larger areas with less labor, so we reduce the cost. That's good, right? Well, it turns out that less labor means we have fewer farmers. And if we have fewer farmers, it means that we sell fewer tractors, which is a problem for us. So the technology has gotten so good, the machinery, the software has gotten so good, right? But our equipment sales are down. Because it's so good, we don't need as much of this stuff. And so what we need to do is it's time for us to reconsider our business model. And John Deere has really thought about this carefully, and they've started to build in, with all that integrated software, they're building services alongside all of the hardware equipment. So you've got hardware, you've got software, and you've got software services that operate this whole integrated ecosystem, right? So let's come back and let's talk about, really quick, just to kind of recap the business needs. We're talking about less reliance on equipment sales, right? We've got to figure out a new way to make money. We've got to protect our margins. We've got to stay profitable. It's really important for that. Customer loyalty. If we lose these customers, they're never going to forgive us, okay? So we're back to our framing mechanism, right? And we fill in the blanks. We believe that meeting cost efficiency and timeliness concerns for farmers, we don't know with what exactly yet, will create less reliance on sales, higher margins, and maintain loyalty. Okay, we're starting to fill this out. Story's coming together. Okay, so Act 3, the promise, also known as the offer you can't refuse. So look, we're here, right? We're here and we're trying to figure out what is it going to take to meet our user needs and our business needs. And we're building these amazing, sexy new machines. Again, they are big, they are green, they are amazing, and they can do the kind of work efficiently that you were simply not able to do so many years ago. In fact, the farmer that we talked to for this, he said, look, I can farm 2,500 acres easier today than I could farm 500 acres 40 years ago, right? They're providing this, and it's amazing, the kind of stuff these things can do. Again, just to kind of drive this home, check this out. Who's driving that tractor? Right? This is a real video, right? This is real life on farms. They have created this GPS-tracked self-driving technology that allows farmers to not only become more efficient and more productive, they can operate multiple devices with one person. And to get all this goodness, you have to agree to one catch. And that catch is this. There's a license agreement to the software. So you just paid $1 million for your amazing new badass green tractor that can drive itself and do all this work. And you've rented the software. In fact, you've explicitly signed an implied license for the life of the vehicle to operate the vehicle, which means that you don't fully own that device that you just paid $1 million for. Right? To take advantage of all that efficiency, you have to agree to this license agreement for the life of the vehicle itself. Okay? So let's fill in the blanks. Product features, more efficient, we got that. More capable, we got that. Integrated services, right? That's where the revenue comes from, and a license agreement, right? Which is the only way that you're allowed to get any of this goodness, Right? You have to sign up for that license agreement. So let's fill in our hypothesis statement, right? We believe meeting cost, efficiency, and timeliness concerns with greater efficiency, integrated services capability, and the license agreement will create less reliance on sales, higher margins, and maintain loyalty. Awesome. Great. Act 4. We have a problem all of a sudden. The wheat is ripe, time to harvest. Remember, I told you, if we don't get it out of the ground right now, it rots, and we lose all of that investment. And so our farmer has a problem to deal with. That's not the problem he has to deal with. This is the problem he has to deal with. The tractor broke down. Now, normally, what a farmer would do, and farmers pride themselves on a DIY, do-it-yourself culture. We can fix it, we can get it done, we'll help each other out, and we'll get it out of there. Now, normally what a farmer would do, they would fix the tractor on their own. They'd replace a part, they'd fix the engine, they'd fix the motor, they'd get it up and running, they'd harvest the wheat, and they'd move on. But with the license agreement that you signed and the integrated software and hardware built into these machines, you, the farmer, are no longer allowed to do that. Right? In fact, you can't replace the part and get it to work without accessing the software that's built into the machine. And the only way that you can actually fix your tractor is to call a John Deere dealer and have them come out to your farm and fix your tractor for you by accessing the software. They plug their laptop into it, they fix it, and then you can get up and running again. Now, that's fine if there's a John Deere near you. Farmland is usually vast, especially in the United States, and some people live more than 500 miles away from their nearest John Deere dealer. And it might take 2 or 3 days for that person to come out there and fix your tractor for you, in which time you've lost the harvest, you've lost the crop, and you've lost your profit margin. And why? Because you can't fix it yourself. Right? The license agreement that you signed keeps you from being able to fix your own $1 million tractor by yourself. And the question becomes, how is this possible? How can this be? Right? You just paid all this money, right? And the answer lies in the United States in a piece of legislation called the Dmca. Now, the Dmca is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and it was conceived 20 years ago. It was conceived in the 90s, in 1998, to make it unlawful to circumvent protection of software. In other words, it's not unlawful to access the software, it's unlawful to crack the software. Right? And that was designed for a world of DVDs and boxed software. So if you bought Windows Vista in a box, you were not allowed to crack the protection if you tried to do that. Right? But that's what this was designed to do. So you couldn't pirate DVDs and that you couldn't pirate software that came in a box. But what's happened since 1998, as we've seen over and over and over again today, is that software has permeated everything. There is technology in literally everything that we use. It's in our toasters, it's in our coffee machines, it's in our phones, it's in our cars, and it's in our tractors. And when we try to repair these things, we bump up against this law that says you cannot access the software, you can't circumvent the protection that's out there. And what's interesting is that the only way to modify these modern objects is to access the information that's behind that protection, whether it's code or service manuals or error codes or diagnosis tools. You have to crack the software so that you can fix it. Now, there was a time where if you bought something and you figured out how to get more value out of it, for example, let's say you bought a blender, right? And over time you turned it into a paint mixer, right? You were able to capture all that value for yourself as the consumer of that product. But today, all of that extra value that gets generated from the code that's embedded in these integrated devices goes back to the manufacturer. Consumers don't get to benefit from that right away. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're building these integrated hardware and software devices, the question you have to ask yourself is this. In these situations, are you solving user needs or are you exploiting user needs? Because both of these things will make you money. And the question you have to ask yourself is, which business do you want to be in? Right? And as product managers, as makers of products and services, you have the unique capacity to think this through. Right? Are we making our customers' lives better? Or are we exploiting their needs so that we can make more money? Now, before we move on to the next act, let's talk for a second about users specifically, right? How do we know what works right? How do we know that a product works, right? We talked today, there's been a tremendous conversation around outcomes, the change in behavior. And the behavior we're talking about is people's behavior, your target audience, right? We know that something works when we see customers behaving differently with the products and services that we put in their hands, right? And the culture of our target audience makes a tremendous difference in how they react to the products and services that we build for them. In this case, we're dealing with farmers, but the culture of your target audience will determine how they work with your product or service. Let me show you an example, okay? Now, in design, everything looks perfect, right? We design an intersection, and it looks amazing. It's going to work great, right? And then we prototype it, and we put it out there, right? And even in the prototype phase, yeah, this thing's really going to work, right? And then we put it into the real world. And we try to see if it plays out in the same way that we had imagined in our designs. And it doesn't. It doesn't. The culture of the people using your product or service will determine how they use that product or service. And that will vary from place to place to place. We can watch this forever. They never crash. It's amazing. It's truly a remarkable video, right? But look, this very, very, very simple thing that was put together could never be reconstructed and elicit the same outcome in Lisbon or in Stockholm or in New York or in Tokyo, right? The culture of the people who use your product will determine what they are trying to do with it and how they will actually use it. And there's no, and despite, I was going to leave, I'll stay here and be quiet for a while. Look, we're all smart people. We try to hire smart people or experts. We have experience in our field, and we think we know how to solve these problems and design them well. And the reality is that people will continue to surprise us with what they actually end up doing. What you believe will change customer behavior in a positive way is likely to be wrong, right? And it's our responsibility to make sure that the products and the services, particularly the integrated products and services that we put together, are actually meeting the user needs so that we can capture that value back as a business model. Look, bottom line is this: the culture of the people that you are building products and service for will always win. Okay? You cannot get people to change their culture simply because you like your business model. Okay? And it's something to think about as we build this. Now, our goal is to get these ideas into market quickly, right? To ship ideas into market quickly so that we can figure out whether or not we're seeing the kinds of outcomes, the changes in behavior that we're looking for in our target audience. And then based on what we're learning, we respond to that. We change the product, we change the service so that our customers are more successful, so that we can capture that value back as a business, okay? All right, back to our story, right? This is our framing mechanism. This is where we are, right? We're looking to drive cost and efficiency. Cost efficiency, timeliness concerns with greater efficiency, integrated services, and a license agreement, right? Which will drive sales, margins, and loyalty, right? Now we have a problem. Now we're looking for evidence, right? We will know we are successful when we see this change in customer behavior. What is the evidence that we're looking for? Well, in this case, our story continues with finding an unlikely ally. Now, remember, this is our farmer. Don't forget our farmer, right? The wheat is ripe. It needs to be harvested. We've got an issue. The tractor is broken. Who are you going to call? Close enough. We're going to call this guy. Lando. It's the same guy. Now, but we're not going to call this guy. You know who farmers are calling to fix this problem? This guy. Ukrainian hackers who are making black market code and devices available on the internet for American farmers to download so they can crack their tractors, so they can fix it, so they can harvest the wheat. These are devices that are currently available. You can go on YouTube. These are black market devices that allow you to bypass the security on your John Deere tractor so that you can then fix it. That's all these folks are trying to do. There's hardware, there's software, and all you have to do is you can buy this stuff online in the black market, right? This is what farmers are doing to get around the policies that are written in code into these tractors that enforce the business model that John Deere is trying to force on these particular farmers, right? And here's the bottom line on all of this, okay? And again, comes back to the culture conversation. When you enforce bad policy, and to be clear, design decisions, coding decisions, requirements decisions, all the things that you do on a daily basis is policy. When you enforce bad policy, people will work around that policy. They will figure out how to move beyond it. They will figure out how to get the job done because that's more important to them, right? The way we've always done things will be more important to them, okay? Act 6, our final act. How will our story end? Well, this is where we are. It's where we are, right? We believe that solving this user need, right, with this license agreement will create less reliance on sales, and we'll know we're right when we see what? Black market code being downloaded by farmers to crack their tractors, right? The interesting thing, too, is that John Deere is pushing back pretty hard on this. In fact, there's a recent update on this, in fact, that they're convincing state legislatures in the United States to make it illegal for farmers to get parts or service or software service from unlicensed dealers as well, and they're winning in court. So they're really pushing hard because this is their business model. They see this as their future as equipment sales go down. But the reality here, and the thing I want you to take away is this. What happens here in John Deere, unless you work there, is outside of your control. But what happens at your company is absolutely up to you because the policies that you enforce in your products need to meet that customer need or they will find a way around it, right? They'll figure out how to get done what they need to get done. And the reality is this, we work in technology. We're always going to be ahead of pretty much everything, particularly legal structures, right? The legal structures in use are not fit for our current realities and it will take them years to catch up. It doesn't matter what country you're in, right? We keep trying to catch up to technology. It moves too fast, right? And the question is, these gaps between what you can do and what's legal are always going to be there, right? And the question is, will you use those gaps to serve customers or will you use them to exploit them? Because both will make you money, right? And that's a question that you have to actually ask yourselves, right? Again, we cannot get ahead of culture. The technology will not change. Farmers have a DIY culture. If we don't let them fix their devices, they'll figure out a way to fix their devices. And again, I want to drive this home. When you enforce bad policy, which is what we do, we enforce policy at work every day, the business's policies, people will work around that policies. And we see this with the cracked code that they're downloading. There's this movement in the United States called the right to repair. I'm serious. It's one of the few bipartisan, both sides of the political spectrum in the United States are behind this, to figure out ways to empower people to fix their products. And we see this with things like the Repair Manifesto, these things that this material that goes out and talks about why repairing is good for learning, for creativity, for design. There's a site called ifixit.org that collects manuals and error codes and diagnostics for pretty much everything. So if you need to fix something and it's got software in it, you can go here and try to find that manual because the company won't give it to you, right? Because it's enforced in that policy. And so the things I want you to take away from this talk, okay? First and foremost is this. You are in the software business, okay? That's the way we scale products. That's the way we scale our services. That's the way we grow as a company. And the amazing thing about software is that it unlocks new business models, which is great. It's great for us. It allows us to scale in new and amazing ways. The code that you write, the designs that you make, the requirements that you force into your products and services enforce the policies of your business, okay? The culture of your target audience will always trump that policy, always. Right? The way they want to work is the way they will work, despite what you code and design into your products. Building these feedback loops that you heard about all day today reveals that culture. Let's see what they do. And when we see that evidence from the market that says, hey, you know what, they're downloading black market code, let's do something about that instead of trying to force people back into the policy that we care. And so success for us, and again, kind of to wrap this up for the whole day, is we have to frame our success in user-centric terms. That's the most important thing, and I hope that that's the biggest takeaway you take from all of this over the course of the day. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you had a good day.